What happens when you return to the room that once erased you, this time seated higher than them all? I slipped in through the side door, no security detail, no announcement. Just me, a gray coat, and eyes trained to stay unreadable. The courtroom was cold. Not from the air conditioning, but from that quiet tension people wear when they expect someone to break. At the defense table, Clara sat rigid as ever, chin-high lips, tight hands, gently twisting the edge of a napkin she probably didn't realize she brought in. I took the back row. Nobody looked up. Not yet. Then the judge entered, Audrey M. Jameson. I remembered her. A black woman with a razor-sharp mind who once lit up a national governor's conference with her no-nonsense fire. Her eyes swept the room. And then they stopped. She leaned forward, slightly squinting. Wait. Is that Naomi Calder, the governor of North Carolina? She didn't raise her voice, but the words dropped like thunder. Silence. A journalist dropped his pen. A woman lifted her head from her phone. Clara turned fully around in her seat, eyes wide, the usual poise cracked wide open. In the front row, my mother, Martha Calder, clutched my father's arm. He leaned forward, brows pinched, trying to decode whether the ghost of a daughter he erased had come back in flesh and power. I didn't flinch, didn't nod, didn't smile. I just sat. And in that silence, I could hear everything, the rapid-fire camera shutters, the shuffle of legal pads, the hard swallow in Clara's throat. But louder than all of that was the truth nobody wanted to say out loud. I wasn't there to save anyone. I was there to remind them I exist. They called me a stain on the family name, so I tore that name off and built something cleaner. When I was 19, my sister told me I embarrassed her, not in a cruel, loud way. She whispered it like a confession she'd been holding in for years. You're just exhausting, Naomi. Emotional. Reckless. It's hard to bring you around people. That same week, I came home from a shift at the campus library to find the locks changed. A plastic bag sat on the porch, my clothes, my sketchbooks, the thrifted jacket I wore almost every day. No note, no explanation. Just silence. My father called it tough love. My mother said nothing, just stood behind the curtains watching. I waited 3 hours on that porch, thinking maybe someone would open the door and say it was all a mistake. No one did. So I left. I didn't run away, I erased myself, cut my hair, changed my name, wiped every trace of Naomi Calder from the internet. Not because I was ashamed, but because I knew that if they saw me rise, they'd do everything to pull me back down. They didn't just exile me, they made sure I knew I wasn't welcome to come back. I spent nights in a car, borrowed from a friend who stopped answering my texts after day 6. I picked up graveyard shifts, cleaning office floors, bussing tables, filling in as an overnight receptionist at a motel where the sheets never felt clean. I didn't cry much, not after the first week. I just worked. And when I couldn't work, I wrote poems, thoughts, rants. I painted on the backs of cardboard boxes, turned paint into color when I couldn't afford canvas. I told myself I was documenting the rebuild, even when I wasn't sure what I was building. Then came the video, a private clip, shot without my knowledge during spring break, uploaded by someone I used to trust. It made its rounds fast, message boards, group chats, Facebook comments from people I hadn't seen since high school. Clara found it first. I only know that because she sent it to my father before she sent it to me. No concern, no support. Just a message: you need to act before this becomes a scandal. And act he did. Not to protect me, but to protect the Calder name. He stormed into my apartment, threw my diploma on the floor, and spat. If this is who you are, you're no daughter of mine. He called me a stain, a disgrace, said I had tainted everything he'd built. But here's what he didn't understand. Stains only stay if you never wash the fabric. And I was already stitching a whole new pattern. They stripped me of a name, so I gave myself a future instead. The bus to Denver smelled like dust, diesel, and quiet despair. I sat in the very back hugging a red backpack filled with everything I hadn't lost, yet 3 sketchbooks, 2 pairs of jeans, a cracked phone, and the will to survive. No one looked at me. I was just another girl trying to disappear. Outside, the desert blurred past, sun-baked and unforgiving. Inside, I stared at my reflection in the bus window. My hair was shorter now, my eyes sharper. I didn't look like Naomi anymore. I wasn't sure I ever had. At a rest stop in Santa Fe, I pulled out a leather-bound notebook. It used to be filled with birthdays, family recipes, letters my mother had written when I was little. I tore out every page, one by one, fed them into a trash can fire behind the station. The flames didn't roar. They just crackled quietly, like a secret being told for the last time. Back on the bus, I stared at my hands. They weren't trembling, not anymore. I whispered something to myself, 3 words I hadn't dared to say out loud. I begin here. In Denver, I rented a room in a shared apartment. The walls were thin. The heat barely worked. My mattress sat on the floor next to a folding table I found on the curb. But it was mine. I took any job that paid: diner waitress, janitor, data entry temp. No one asked questions. I didn't offer answers. At night I painted. Not for beauty, just release. A toothbrush dipped in dollar store acrylics, shapes that bled into each other like bruises. One canvas I kept hidden behind the curtain, black and red, a body curled in shadow. And I wrote. In code, in fragments. Little whispers I could only admit to myself. I needed a name to apply for work. Not Naomi Calder, not anymore. So I chose something simple. Clean? N. Ray. Not a reinvention, a reclamation. Because the girl who left Texas had nothing. But the woman arriving in Denver. She had a fire and a bus seat no one saved, but she claimed anyway. They overlooked me in every room until I started reading what they skipped. My 3rd job was at a free clinic just off Colfax. Officially, I was a cleaner, mopping floors, scrubbing sinks, hauling out biohazard bins. The nurses barely saw me. The doctors never did. I was invisible, which made it easier to listen. Late one night, I found a file left open in an exam room. A woman's name, her immigration status flagged in bold red ink. She had a toddler, no family, and a pending deportation order over a paperwork error. A single form filed 2 weeks too late. It wasn't my job to care, but I read every word. That night, I stayed past my shift and searched the system. I wasn't supposed to have access, but no one ever changed the passwords on the cleaning logins. I found 2 more cases, then 5, then 12. People falling through cracks no one admitted were there. I started a spreadsheet, quietly, methodically, names, dates, patterns. At first it was just to understand, then it became more. When the shouting happened, it was instinct. A Friday graveyard shift. A uniformed officer barking at a young mother in Spanish trying to make her sign papers she didn't understand. I stepped between them before I knew what I was doing. She's not signing that, I said, voice calm but firm. Who are you? He snapped. Someone who can read your software. That file's outdated. It was a bluff, but it worked. He left. The next day, I was called into the clinic director's office. I thought I was getting fired. Instead, I met Rafael Delgado. He ran a non-profit next-door Proyecto Libre, help for undocumented families, translation, advocacy, real things. You've been paying attention, he said, holding up my spreadsheet. Come work for us. I started the next week fetching coffee, delivering envelopes, translating intake forms when no one else was around, but I kept watching, listening, learning. I took free online policy classes, downloaded immigration casebooks, sat in on every city council meeting I could sneak into. At night, I'd open those dusty case files again. Not because it was required, because I couldn't stop seeing them names. No one remembered stories that had been buried. That was the thing about files no one read. They hold the truth. People are too afraid to say out loud. And I was done being afraid. I didn't run for power. I ran because no one else would, especially for people like me. By the time I turned 30, my name, N. Ray, meant something in Denver's advocacy circles. Not famous, not flashy, but respected. I had become the person people called when a shelter was raided, when a landlord threatened, when silence threatened to crush another mother, another child. Still, no one saw it coming when I filed. Not even me. The State House seat had been held by a man who hadn't returned a constituent's email in 4 years. His campaign signs were still from 2016. His message, keep Colorado strong. Whatever that meant. I didn't have a party machine behind me, no PACs, no campaign managers in suits, just an overworked printer, a busted Honda, and a dozen volunteers, mostly women who had once stood in the same lines I had. My posters were plain. No glossy headshot, just bold text on a white background. Let the work speak first. When a reporter asked why I never smiled in photos, I said because I'm not here to be palatable. I'm here to be effective. That quote went viral. I refused to tell my story in campaign ads. No sob music. No dramatic narration. I wasn't a victim, and I wasn't a fantasy. I was proof. Proof that someone who once mopped floors could write policy. Proof that a girl no one saved a seat for could claim the whole table. During the first town hall, someone tried to rattle me. Do you even have family in this district? I looked him in the eye. No. They made sure of that. But I built one anyway. Applause didn't come right away. But when it didn't stop. Every debate, every interview, they tried to find a crack in me. Who was I really? What was I hiding? I never flinched. I had already survived being seen in the worst way. What were a few cameras compared to that? My platform was simple justice without exception, transparency without delay, and protection without permission. I wasn't selling hope. I was handing out blueprints. Election night, we didn't gather in a ballroom. We met in the church basement where I'd once helped distribute blankets. The results came in on a projector sheet taped to the wall. I won by 6%. No fireworks, no champagne, just stunned silence. And a long exhale I hadn't realized I'd been holding for 10 years. I didn't smile, but I stood taller than I ever had. The headline hit like a quiet explosion. District Attorney under investigation for evidence. Tampering, and beneath it, Isabella Calder. I hadn't spoken her name aloud in over a decade. My sister, the golden one. The reason I was thrown out. The one who whispered she's the one in the video 15 years ago. Now she was the story. The allegations were serious, manipulating evidence in an immigration trial. A mother from Honduras, a child on the verge of deportation, and Isabella at the center of a storm she used to control. Public defenders called it betrayal. Her legal allies called it a smear campaign. I didn't say a word, but the calls started immediately. My comms team, my donors, even national press. I was a sitting representative now, a former nobody with a rising reputation and a history they could smell blood in. We advise you stay neutral, my advisor said. This isn't your fight, another added. She's your sister, right? I didn't correct them. Not anymore. But inside, I knew this scandal would drag me back under if I let it. I flew to San Antonio without press. No entourage, no name badge. Just me, plain clothes, and a quiet seat in the last row of the courtroom. When Isabella entered, she still looked pristine. Hair pulled back, suit pressed, eyes tired but still carrying that same pride that once made me invisible. Then Judge Ellen Nguyen walked in. She paused, squinted at the gallery. Wait, she said, her voice slicing through the hush. Is that Representative Ray? Every head turned, every camera lens shifted. A gasp, a dozen whispers. And my sister. Her face cracked. I didn't move. I didn't nod. I didn't blink. The judge recovered. The proceedings began, but the air never settled after that. The governor's sister, no, the girl they once exiled, had returned. Not to defend, not to speak. To witness. That night my face was back on TV. Old wounds re-aired like reruns. They unearthed the video again. The grainy clip. The shame. The history I had outlived. But this time I didn't flinch. When my aide asked if I wanted a statement drafted, I said no. Let them look. Let them whisper. I had survived being seen before. I was done apologizing for existing. The house looked the same. That made it worse. Same porch light flickering above the door. Same wind chimes. Same front step where I'd once been, left a duffel bag, like a stray. But this time I walked in without knocking. The smell hit me, first lemon oil and roasted chilies. My mother's attempts at comfort. My father stood stiff near the hallway, a collared shirt pressed too perfectly. And Isabella sat at the dining table, lips tight, shoulders small. They'd set a place for me, my old chair reupholstered in new leather. Glossy polished. A cover-up. We ate in silence, the clink of forks louder than any conversation. My mother was the first to try. "Remember when you used to draw on napkins?" She said, her voice light like air trying too hard to lift a dead weight. Manuel nodded. "Your speech last month was professional." They weren't speaking to me. They were speaking at the version of me they wished I'd become. Isabella didn't touch her food. Her voice cracked when she finally said, "I never thought it would go this far." I didn't answer. I let the weight of her consequences fill the room. Then came the ask. My mother reached toward me but stopped short. "Maybe you could say something, just a few words, to the prosecutor." Manuel added, "Not a formal letter, just family helping family." My fork hit the plate with a soft click. I looked at each of them. My father asking only because I now had power. My mother crying not because she understood but because she feared shame. And Isabella, the same sister who'd once chosen her own ambition over my existence. If I weren't a representative, I asked softly, would I still be your daughter? Silence. Would I still be your sister? No one spoke. My mother's lip trembled. Isabella's eyes welled. My father looked away. I stood up. "I kept your name," I said. "But I built my life without you in it. I walked out without dessert, without drama. Just the truth trailing behind me like smoke." Back in the car, I stared out at the house that once unmade me. And for the first time, I felt nothing. No anger, no longing, just clarity. That dinner wasn't a reunion. It was a test. And I had passed the only way I knew how. By leaving the table, they only sat when they needed me back. It started with a buzz at 3:14 a.m. Then another, and another. I sat up in bed, eyes still adjusting to the dark as image after image flashed across my screen. Grainy screenshots of a spring break video I thought the world had forgotten. A photo of me crying outside a shelter in year 1. Emails I wrote in desperation. All leaked. No caption, no sender. Just a quiet storm knocking at the door I hadn't closed tight enough. At 9:00 a.m., my communications director entered my office tablet in hand, face pale. "We've got something," she said, sliding it across my desk. The headline read, "The real Naomi Calder leaked files from the governor's past." I didn't flinch. At noon, a call came in from an old colleague at the Justice Department. "You didn't hear it from me," he whispered. "But your father's been asking around. Vetting, digging." My fingers curled slightly on the desk. This wasn't curiosity. It was leverage. He wanted to bury me with the same past he once exiled me for. That night, I didn't wait. I stepped into the storm. The next morning, I stood behind a podium, no state flag, no official seal, just a backdrop of hand-painted art from immigrant children I'd helped. I wore white, no jewelry, no spin. "We've all seen how power works," I said. "It hides in bloodlines, in old secrets, in family dinners that double as silencers." A hush fell. No flashing lights, no dramatics, just breath held still. Then I introduced the Personal Integrity Protection Act, a bill that would make it a criminal offense to weaponize the private histories of public servants, whistleblowers, or anyone serving the public good. I didn't name names, but everyone knew. The media didn't devour me this time. They stood beside me. Headlines changed. "Governor Calder draws a line. From disgrace to defiant. She survived it once, now she's fighting it back." I watched the clips alone that night. The old video, the tears, the emails. I let them play. And then I whispered 3 words into the quiet, "Let them look." Because survival isn't about staying hidden. It's about standing still when they aim the camera and refusing to flinch. It sat tucked under a folder on my desk, creased twice, unsigned, and written in the same black ink I'd used the night I thought about being merciful. A clemency request. Not formal, just compassionate. I had written it weeks ago during a moment of stillness when I thought maybe, just maybe, my sister deserved a softer ending. I hadn't told anyone. I hadn't shown it. I wasn't sure I even meant it. That morning I burned it, watched the corners curl, and turned to ash in a brass dish by my window. Because the call that came before the fire, that's the one I still remembered most. 15 years ago, Isabella's voice had cracked through the hallway, not with sorrow or fear, but with calculation. She's the one in the video she had whispered to our father. That whisper lit the match. I just carried the burn. So when she came into my office, shoulders sunk in blouse, wrinkled a ghost of the woman she used to be. I stayed quiet. She sat across from me and tried to find words I'd already outgrown. "I don't want you to fix it," she said. "I just wanted you to know the truth." But the truth wasn't new. It had just finally caught up with her. She spoke of jealousy, of stepping on me to climb higher, of looking up now and finding herself beneath a sky she no longer recognized. When she finished, I didn't offer comfort. I didn't offer rage. I simply said, "You didn't destroy me. You just erased me." And when someone's erased long enough, they learn how to become unforgettable. Tears welled in her eyes. "Mom still thinks you'll save me," she whispered. I turned to the window. The city pulsed below us, oblivious to the quiet reckoning taking place on the 23rd floor. "I didn't come here to save anyone," I said. "I saved myself so no one could drown me again." There was no hug, no final words, just a slow nod between two women who shared DNA and damage, but nothing else. She left, and I turned back to my desk, the folder now bare, the letter never sent. Because some stories don't need rewriting. They need to end. The snow had started falling again, thin, quiet, and steady, as I stepped out of the community center and onto the cracked sidewalk. No cameras, no aides, no speech to give. Just the scrape of my boots and the sound of children laughing in the distance as they chased each other through the winter dusk. Inside the folding chairs were still warm from the people who'd sat with me not for politics, not for applause, but for truth. For the permission to stop carrying what never belonged to them. I'd spoken plainly. I didn't make it because I was brave, I'd told them. I made it because I stopped waiting for someone to invite me. They had listened, nodded. Some cried. A few clapped. Most just sat still, stunned by the simplicity of it all. When the last question was asked and the last chair was folded, I'd noticed him. Manuel? My father. Standing in the back, no badge, no uniform, just an old man with too many regrets stitched into the lines of his face. Our eyes met, not in anger, not in apology, just recognition. The way two strangers sometimes do at a train station, realizing they missed the same one a long time ago. I didn't wave. He didn't move, and that was enough. I turned hands in my coat pockets, heart strangely light. The kind of lightness that doesn't come from winning, but from letting go. No more speeches, no more proving. I had said all I needed to say. As I crossed the street, I passed a newsstand with my face on a paper. Governor Reyes Reshapes Legacy. I didn't stop. I didn't read it. I'd spent too long letting other people write my story. At the corner, a young woman recognized me. Her coat was fraying at the cuffs, and her backpack sagged with the weight of something heavy, books maybe, or dreams she hadn't said aloud yet. She didn't ask for a photo. She just said, "Thank you for showing us we don't need permission." I smiled. "You never did." Then I kept walking. Past the library, past the mural of immigrant workers I'd helped fund, past the coffee shop that once let me sit for hours when I had nowhere else to go. Each step was a closing chapter. Each breath a beginning. I didn't look back. Because there was nothing left behind me worth turning for, and everything ahead quiet, unpromised mine.